You're at a hotel lobby, waiting for your room key. A man walks in. Watch. Luggage that costs more than your rent. And the front desk shifts. Smiles widen. Someone appears from the back. You notice it. You've always noticed it. The way a room quietly reorganizes itself around certain people. The way attention moves like it has somewhere better to be. In America, you learn early that not everyone gets treated the same, and you learn faster that money is usually the reason. Your name is Arthur Vale, and you've been through enough to know what the bottom of that looks like. Level 1, $20,000 to $45,000. You're 24. You work the opening shift at a dental office. Receptionist, scheduler, the person who says, "Have a great day," 40 times before noon. You make $31,000 a year. That's not a complaint. That's just the number. And the number, you're starting to understand, is doing things you didn't ask it to do. Your take-home is $2,080 a month. Rent on a one-bedroom in a mid-sized city, not New York, not San Francisco, somewhere reasonable, runs $1,340. That leaves $740 for everything else. Car insurance, gas, groceries, the phone bill you've already talked yourself out of upgrading twice. You're not bad with money. You're just doing math that doesn't have a good answer. When something breaks, you don't fix it right away. You wait and see if it gets worse. That's not a financial strategy. That's just what $740 teaches you. The thing nobody tells you about this level is how much of your energy goes toward being taken seriously. You go to the bank to ask about a personal loan. $3,000, maybe $4,000? Enough to pay off the credit card before the interest compounds again. The loan officer is pleasant. She offers you water. She types things into her computer, then carefully explains why it's not going to work right now. Your credit score is 618. You got there because 18 months ago, your car needed a timing belt, and you put $1,100 on a card you couldn't pay off fast enough. One problem created another, and now the number that follows you everywhere says you're a risk. You're not a risk. You're someone who had one bad month in a year full of narrow months. But the system doesn't read the story. It reads the score. You walk out, and the sun is doing what it always does. Nothing changes outside, but something tightened in your chest on the way to the parking lot. Something you don't have a clean word for, and you sit in your car for a minute before you start it. At work, there's a guy, call him Derek, who manages the practice. He makes around $90,000 a year. You know this not because he told you, but because of the way he moves through a room, the way the office manager defers to him on things that aren't technically his call, the way the sales reps who come in on Tuesdays remember his name and forget yours, even though you're the one who scheduled their appointments and buzzed them through the door. Derek is not a bad person. That's what makes it harder to name. He's perfectly decent, but decency and visibility are not the same thing, and at this level you start to feel the difference in your body before you can explain it in words. You are managed. You are thanked. You are not consulted. Currently, nearly half of workers earning under $50,000 a year say they're living paycheck to paycheck. You don't need that statistic to believe it. You live it every second week, when the paycheck hits on Friday, and by Monday, you've already allocated every dollar to something that was already late. What that number doesn't capture is what it feels like to be competent, genuinely good at your job, reliable, the person everyone counts on to hold the front desk together, and still have your ideas quietly shelved, your suggestions half heard, your presence registered without being felt. You start to understand something about money that has nothing to do with spending. It's not just what you buy, it's what people assume about you before you open your mouth. How much patience they extend, how long they keep listening, whether they ask the follow-up question or let the conversation drift somewhere else. At $31,000, the room doesn't read you as a threat or a peer. It reads you as a fixture. Present, useful, easy to look past. You keep showing up, you keep doing the work, you keep waiting for the number to change. Because some part of you already suspects that when it does, something else will change with it. You're right, you just don't know yet how much. Level 2, $55,000 to $95,000. The raise doesn't arrive like you thought it would. There's no ceremony. You get an email on a Thursday with a new offer letter attached, and you open it in the break room between patients, your lunch getting cold on the counter. $72,000. You read it twice. You close the attachment, you finish your sandwich. That's it. That's the whole moment. But something has shifted quietly underneath everything. And over the next few weeks, you start to feel it in places you didn't expect. The first thing you notice is your shoulders. Specifically, that they're not up around your ears anymore. When you check your account on a Sunday night, the math still requires attention. Rent, car, student loans, the Roth IRA you finally opened last month with $200 because someone at work mentioned it and you figured you'd been putting it off long enough. But there's a small margin now, where there wasn't one before. Not comfort, exactly. More like the absence of a specific kind of dread. You didn't know how loud that dread was until it got quieter. Your take-home lands around $4,400 a month. You moved. Same city, slightly better building, 1580 now. And for the first time, the decision didn't feel like a gamble. The car payment, the utilities, the loans. You run the numbers and there's still something left. Not much, but something. You put $300 into your index fund the first month and felt a quiet pride about it that you mentioned to nobody, because there was nobody to mention it to who would understand what it cost you to get here. What surprises you more than the money, though, is the room. The same room you've always been in, behaving differently. You're at a team meeting and your manager, call her Sandra, mid-40s, runs 3 offices now, asks what you think about the new scheduling system before the decision is already made, not after, before. She writes something down when you talk. That didn't used to happen. You haven't gotten smarter between March and July. You haven't changed how you speak or what you know. But Sandra has a different read on you now, and you can feel it. And you don't entirely know what to do with that feeling except notice it and keep going. The sales reps still come in on Tuesdays. They know your name now. They bring you coffee without being asked, remembering how you take it. And there's a version of you that wants to find that generous. But mostly, you just find it accurate. They're not warmer because you changed. They're warmer because the number changed. And the number tells them something about how much of their time you're worth. You're not offended. You've been on the other side of that math yourself. But you file it away, somewhere in the part of you that's been keeping a running count of how these things actually work. The loneliness of this level is specific and hard to explain. You're moving. Most of the people you came up with are not, or not as fast. And the distance isn't dramatic enough to name, but it shows up in small ways. The group chat gets quieter when you mention the new apartment. A friend you've known since college goes a little flat on the phone when you talk about putting money away. Like you've said something slightly out of pocket. You haven't. You're just doing what the situation is asking you to do. But the situation is asking you to do something different than what it's asking them. And that difference, small as it is, starts to put space between you and people you didn't expect to grow away from. You're not wealthy. You know that. Currently, more than a third of people earning in this range still describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. And some months, you understand exactly why. The margin exists, but it's not deep. One bad quarter, a medical bill, a car, a month where everything lands at once, closes it fast. What you have is not security. What you have is visibility. And visibility, you're learning, is its own kind of currency, with its own kind of cost. The cost doesn't become clear until the number changes again. Level 3, $120,000 to $250,000. You don't set out to become someone who makes this kind of money. It happens in stages. A title change, a lateral move that turned out not to be lateral. A company that needed exactly what you'd spent 8 years getting good at. The offer comes in at $165,000. And you sit with it for a day before you say yes. Not because you're unsure, because you want to feel it for a minute before it becomes ordinary. It becomes ordinary faster than you expected. Your take-home after taxes lands somewhere around $9,200 a month, depending on the state, depending on what you're putting into the 401k. You're contributing enough to hit the annual limit this year, $23,500, which means roughly $1,950 comes off the top before you see it. The mortgage on the house you bought 2 years ago runs $3,400. The car, the utilities, the insurance, the groceries that now somehow cost $900 a month for 2 people. You run the numbers and the margin is real. But it's not as wide as the gross figure suggests. What's different isn't that money stopped mattering. What's different is that the emergencies stopped feeling like emergencies. The water heater goes, you replace it. That's it. No math spiral at midnight. No choosing between things. You just replace it and move on. And that particular freedom is so quiet, you almost miss how significant it is. What you can't miss is how people behave around you now. It's not loud. It's never loud at this level. It's the contractor who calls you back the same afternoon and shows up when he said he would. It's the financial advisor at the bank who used to hand you a brochure about savings accounts and now wants to schedule a real conversation. Sit down, talk about what you're building. It's the way new people at a dinner party clock your job title in the first 3 minutes and then decide, based on that single data point, how interested they're going to be in the rest of what you say. You're the same person who sat in a car in a bank parking lot with something tight in your chest that you couldn't name. But nobody at this dinner party knows that person. They know the signal, and the signal is clean. There's a guy at work, Call him Paul, early 50s, the kind of person who has opinions about wine and means it, who pulled you aside after a meeting last quarter and told you, without much preamble, that you should be thinking about a board seat in the next few years. Not as a compliment, as an observation, the way you'd tell someone their tire looked low. You nodded, said something reasonable, and spent the next week quietly turning it over. 3 years ago, nobody was saying things like that to you. The information you carry didn't change. The way Paul reads you did. What starts to happen at this income level is that people stop waiting to see who you are. They decide in advance, based on the outline of you, the job, the neighborhood, the fact that you own rather than rent. And then they interact with that decision instead of with you. Most of the time, it works in your favor. You get the benefit of the doubt in rooms where you used to have to earn it, sentence by sentence. Emails get answered. Invitations arrive that didn't used to. Someone introduces you at a party and uses a word like impressive before you've said anything at all. And you smile and you accept it. And somewhere underneath that, you feel the very slight loneliness of being known for your outline instead of your edges. You're in the top 10% of individual earners in this country. That's not a boast. It's context. Because the top 10% is still a place where the mortgage is real, the taxes are serious, and the gap between what you gross and what you actually keep is wide enough to surprise you every April. What you have, more than anything else, is credibility. Automatic, unearned, waiting for you when you walk into a room. You're about to find out what happens when credibility isn't enough. Level 4, $300,000 to $700,000. You find out what happens gradually, and then all at once. The new role comes with a base of $420,000, a bonus structure on top of that, and a title that makes people at conferences stand up a little straighter when they read your name tag. You've worked for this. You know exactly what it cost. The years, the moves, the nights you stayed when everyone else went home. You're not apologizing for it. But somewhere between signing the offer and the first full month of living inside it, you start to notice something that nobody who wanted this job ever warned you about. The number is large. What you keep is not. Federal income tax at this level takes somewhere between 35 and 37 cents of every dollar you earn above a certain point. Add state tax if you're in California or New York, and you are, because that's where this kind of job tends to live. And your effective rate on the whole picture lands close to 48, sometimes 50%. Your gross is $420,000. Your take-home is roughly $19,000 a month. That's not a complaint. That's still $19,000 a month. But the math surprises people. And it surprises you too, the first time you really sit with it. The mortgage on the house made sense when you bought it. Prices in the neighborhood were already high, rates were what they were, and you bought what the market said someone with your income should buy. That's $7,800 a month. 2 kids in private school, which was not a given, it was a decision, but a decision the social context around you made feel like a default, runs another $4,200. Car leases, because you traded the old one when the new job came, and the new job came with a certain idea of what your parking spot should look like. Groceries, travel, the charitable commitments you made when the income was newer and felt more bottomless than it does now. You run the actual number one night after the kids are in bed, and you stay at the kitchen table a little longer than you meant to looking at it. Currently, roughly 1 in 5 households earning above $150,000 are spending more than 95% of their income on things they've classified as necessary. You know how that sounds from the outside. You knew how it sounded before you were inside it. What you understand now, that you didn't then, is how quietly the category of necessary expands, how it follows the income upward without asking permission, how the mortgage and the tuition and the lease payment stop feeling like choices and start feeling like the floor. There's a woman at your level, call her Vivian, who runs a division 2 floors above yours, who mentioned once, offhand, at a dinner you were both at, that she'd had a rough quarter and was looking at adjusting some things. The table went quiet in a specific way, not unkind, just calibrating, watching. You registered it, and you registered that she registered it too, and neither of you said anything else about it. The social cost of visible contraction at this income level is immediate and felt in the body before it's processed in the mind. Nobody says anything. The room just shifts, the way it always shifts. And you've been watching rooms long enough to know what that shift means. What makes this level strange, in a way that's hard to articulate without sounding ungrateful, is the performance of it. Not the work. You're good at the work. The work is real, but the constant maintenance of the signal, the car in the right lot, the house in the right zip code, the school with the right name on the hoodie your kid wears to soccer on Saturday morning. You didn't sit in a bank parking lot at 24, chest tight, credit score wrong, to end up performing solvency for people who are doing the exact same thing 2 offices down. But here you are. The cage got bigger. It also got significantly harder to see from the inside. What nobody prepares you for is what comes after this. When the number gets large enough that the cage disappears entirely, and something else takes its place. Level 5. $2 million to $10 million, and above. The cage doesn't disappear overnight. It dissolves slowly, deal by deal, until one morning you're sitting in a room where everyone present has already decided you belong there, and you realize the feeling you've been waiting for, the one where you finally stop proving yourself, has arrived so quietly you almost missed it. You're in your late 40s. The equity from the company's sale cleared 14 months ago. The number in the account is the kind of number that stops feeling like a number and starts feeling like a condition. Like weather. Like something that was always going to be true about your life. Even though you know exactly the Tuesday it became true, less than 0.5% of American households earn what you earn now. You don't think about that often. When you do, it doesn't land the way you'd expect. Not as pride, not as guilt, just as a fact about altitude. You're high enough that the geography down below has lost its resolution. You remember what $740 a month after rent felt like. You remember the parking lot, but the memory has the texture of something that happened to someone you used to know well and have since lost touch with. The money at this level doesn't sit in a checking account. It moves. It's allocated across a portfolio. Your advisor, call him Richard, third firm you've worked with, the one you stayed with because he talks to you like a peer instead of a client, rebalances quarterly. Some of it is in index funds, broad and quiet and compounding without your involvement. Some is in private placements you were invited into, not advertised, not available to most people. The kind of thing that gets mentioned at the end of a dinner when most people have left and someone leans over and says, "You should talk to so-and-so." That's the part nobody tells you about this level. The real returns aren't in what you can find. They're in what finds you. And things find you now, constantly. The calls, the decks, the introductions that arrive wrapped in warmth but carry a freight you've learned to read in the first 2 minutes. There's a man you met at a conference last year. Call him George. Built a logistics company over 20 years, sold it, now sits on 4 boards. He called you last spring about a real estate fund he was putting together. The conversation was easy, comfortable. 2 people who speak the same language. You knew within 5 minutes that the opportunity was real. You also knew that the version of you making $31,000 a year didn't exist in George's field of vision. Couldn't have. Not because George is cruel, because attention at this level is a resource like any other. And resources go where returns are expected. You said you'd look at the materials. You did. You wired the money on a Wednesday and didn't think about it again for 3 months. That's the texture of it. Decisions that would have rearranged your entire life at 24 get made on a Wednesday, not recklessly and carefully with real information, but without the weight that used to live in every financial choice. The weight is gone. What replaces it is something more ambiguous, something that takes a while to name. What replaces it is distance, not the kind you chose, the kind that accumulates quietly between you and almost everyone you started with. The friends from before speak a different language now, not because they changed, but because the context changed, and context turns out to be most of what language is. You can go back. You do go back. For birthdays, for funerals, for the occasional dinner where everyone pretends the distance isn't there. But you can feel the translation happening in real time. The effort, on both sides, to find common ground that keeps shrinking. You're not lonely in the way you were at 24, standing at a front desk waiting to be seen. You're lonely in the way that's harder to explain. Harder to admit. Harder to justify when the account balance is what it is. People treat you now like you have answers. Like the altitude comes with clarity. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you're just a person at a very high elevation, looking down at a life you can see perfectly. And touch less and less. The view doesn't tell you what any of it was actually for. The room was never about you. You've been in 5 different rooms now. Same face, same history, same questions about who you are and what you want. What changed was the number. And the number changed everything around you before it changed anything inside you. That's the part worth sitting with. The treatment was never really about you. It was about what you represented to every room you walked into. What they assumed you could do. Endure, spend, decide, become. At 31,000, you were a fixture. At 165,000, you were credible. At 420,000, you were a signal. At 5 million, you were a resource. You, the actual you, were somewhere underneath all of it the whole time. This week, you'll walk into a room. Notice what the room does before you speak. That's not paranoia. That's just paying attention to the thing that's been happening your entire life. The number will keep changing. The question is whether you're building something real underneath it, or just moving from one room's assumptions to the next.